Okay, good evening, everyone. Hopefully, you're all having a much better evening than I am, having just been recovered up the A1 on the back of a recovery vehicle. Um, Due to my minor misfortunes this evening, it's meant that I'm having a slight technical issue with getting Marcus on with us, so I will be hosting for the minute. But it gives me great pleasure to introduce Vanessa and Martin, who have been doing some wonderful stuff up in the Isle of Skye. You can tell that I've been looking at my notes before this at all, or not. So welcome, guys. Thank you very much. Without too much further ado, I assume you have your clicker working there and happy. I will get you going. So over to you guys.
Hi, so I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Martin.
As John said, welcome to our Project Baseline talk. We live up in Scotland, up in the northwest of Scotland, and on the Isle of Skye. And the first thing I should say is that we're not professional biologists, we're citizen scientists. And our talk is about a project that we set up in a local sea loch in 2019, last year. And it's part of the Project Baseline initiative. So for folks that maybe don't know about Project Baseline and what it is, it's a global initiative. So there's over 40 different countries that have Project Baseline projects, things going on with Project Baseline. So it's worldwide, and the idea behind it is that if you keep visiting the same dive site and you observe what you see there, you take temperature and visibility readings when you're diving, you can build up a picture of a particular place. So sites all over the world where people are going back to the same place again and again, taking pictures of and checking the visibility. And the idea is to do with something called shifting baseline syndrome, which is a well-known term in conservation, and it's to do with the fact that we don't realize what we're losing because we don't know what we have now, because there's so much out there in the seas that people aren't seeing. So you can, if you start to actually record what you're seeing in some detail, you can actually see that generation on generation, things are changing out in the seas. So that's the idea behind the project, is that to try and set a baseline in order to be able to start recording and seeing what's going on. And the Project Baseline started just over 10 years ago. So the thing about projects like this is ideally they should go over a long period of time. I mean, ideally you want to get lots of people doing it over long periods to get any sense of what's really happening out there. So I have to come clean now and say that in our project at the moment, there's not a cast of thousands. It's just Martin and I that are doing it. And there are good reasons for this. I don't know, John, if you can change my slide for me, because thank you. It's okay, we got it, thanks. So, the reason for this is that we live, as you can imagine, up on Skye. It's quite remote, so there aren't many other divers that are around that we can team up with. Our nearest club is over in Inverness. There's not even a lot of places that you can get air and gas around here, so you have to be really independent if you're diving out here and be able to kind of fend for yourself. And as you can see from the picture here, we dive all times of the year. So we dive in winter. We have an accommodation business, so we spend a lot of time diving in the winter. And just about all of our diving that we do is shore diving as well. So it's just a handful of times that we've actually done any boat diving, but we've done hundreds of shore dives. And in the last 5 years or so, the kinds of diving that we've been doing has been sea search dives. So there's another really good scheme that's out there. You see the t-shirt here for sea search. It's run by the Marine Conservation Society. And the idea behind it is that you train up recreational divers and to be able to fill out forms, learn about species. So you do some days training, and it sets you up then to be able to record all the things that you see on your dives, and you record habitats and you record species. And so we've been doing this for about five years now, around and about, and all of the data that we have is then checked by qualified people. You send off your form and it's quality assured. They check it all, and then it goes up into national databases. So it actually matters, the forms that you fill out. So it's a great scheme, and it's also a really fantastic excuse for us to be able to go out there and survey, find new places to dive and survey. So, and then you're increasing the knowledge of all the habitats in the area. So this, if we just change to the next slide. So you can see this is the area that is close to us. And you can see the local sea lochs where we dive. So we live on the Isle of Skye, which is on the left there. And you can see the Skye Bridge is the little yellow line up there. So luckily we have access to the mainland as well. We're very lucky. It's very easy to go backwards and forwards. Loch Alsh is in the middle. The big red blob that you can see is our project baseline site that we've set up. And there are other interlinking lochs that you can see there. So we've also got Loch Long, that's up in the north there, and Loch Duich as well. And I say Loch Alsh in the middle. All these three lochs are part of a marine protected area. So this is something that's been developed over time, but it came to head in 2012 when they found a huge amount of flame shells underneath the Skye Bridge, millions of them. And they form a special kind of a habitat. They form reefs, and so they then form a habitat for other species. So this was a really important find, and there had already historically been lots of other interesting priority marine species that had been found in the lochs. So there's all kinds of things there. So they have there's some merle, which is a kind of algae. It looks a bit like pink coral, and again it forms a habitat on the seabed. And then there's also there are also other species like horse mussels as well, and so there's a good variety of quite important species in the marine protected area. The thing about the marine protected area, though, that I should mention is, although it's not completely pristine in terms of the fact that there is some fishing allowed, it's protected from things like scallop dredging and also trawling for prawns. But there are other things that you can do there, because there are some important economic fishing that goes on with things like langoustines, and so people can put out pots for langoustines. There's some scallop diving that goes on, and there's also salmon farms as well. So salmon farming is currently allowed in the marine protected area as well. So there's a range of activities that happen in the area. So the oh, excuse me. There we go. The particular priority marine feature that we're interested in this in the lochs, in the marine protected area, is burrowed mud. So it's not always the go-to environment for recreational divers, is to go into a muddy habitat. But it's definitely really worthwhile up here in Scotland, because there are some really fantastic organisms that live down there. So the sea lochs, they're very dark, and they have a lot of peaty freshwater runoff that comes from the burns all around, and so they often have a few meters of quite dark fresh water on the surface, and then underneath it can be quite clear, but it's also it kind of mimics some of the deep habitats that you get. So it means that a lot of these species, you can actually get to them at recreational depths. So the species that you see there's on the right hand side, it's a sea cucumber. So it looks like a little tree sticking out there. It's a pink spotted sea cucumber, and they're a specialist species for the sea lochs around here. And the main part of the body of the creatures in the mud. And the middle one that you can see is a phosphorescent sea pen. So again, these are really interesting kind of creatures that you find in the lochs. There's 3 of them that you can find. There's that one. There's also one that's called the slender sea pen, which you'll see pictures of later. And then there's something called a tall sea pen, which you sometimes get forests of down in the deeper parts of the lochs, and they're quite eerie because they can be over a meter tall. Bottom left, you can see is a very important species for the area. We locally would call them prawns. They're sometimes called langoustines or scampi, and they are fished. Once you get out of the marine protected areas, they trawl for them quite heavily. And in the sea lochs here, you can find they live in burrows in the mud, so they look a bit like rabbit burrows. And you can see their little pink crawls kind of sticking out of the burrows in the mud. So all these species are specialists in the burrowed mud environment. So the species that we're particularly interested in is the fireworks anemone, and it's an amazing thing when you see it for the first time under the sea, because they're quite big, and in a very dark environment, because they're either white or they've sometimes got pink on them, sometimes even stripy tentacles, they jump out at you. And if you see a bed of them, then it becomes very, very distinct. The tentacles so far, the ones that we've been measuring and looking at, they could be up to 50 centimeters across in the tentacle span, but they range a lot. They live in a tube in the mud, so you see at the bottom that there's a little tube that it's coming out of, and that could be up to a meter long, sticks right down into the muddy environment. And they can retract into the tube. Sometimes when they retract, you see the top of the anemone. Sometimes when the anemones that we've been looking at, they disappear completely into the mud. And they live on things like zooplankton and all kinds of other little krill and things in the water column, which they capture with their tentacles. Their tentacles aren't very stingy compared to some of the other sea anemones that are out there. They catch things, but they're sticky and they're a little bit stingy, but they won't be catching anything very big compared to some of the other anemones. And distinctive as well, because they've got so many tentacles. The tentacles are just beautiful. They're very elegant looking when you see them in the water column. And this is the environment that you find them in. So this is a picture of Loch Alsh. So we dive in this loch. The castle is Elandone Castle. It's a very famous local landmark. Lots of tourists and visitors stop and take pictures there, but a lot of them, they don't realize what's actually under the water there is pretty amazing as well. So we, Martin and I, as I say, we've been doing quite a lot of shore dives and looking around and looking at these anemone beds, and we thought it would be pretty cool if we could actually locate a few that we could look at long term, which is quite, when you think about it, going into a really dark sea loch and trying to mark up some anemones and then be able to repeatedly go and visit them is actually not as easy as it sounds. But we were very lucky, because we've been involved in the Sea Search marine recording scheme. We got in touch with them about what we were doing, and we got a lot of help and advice about setting up the site that we set up, in terms of, because there had already been quite a few anemone surveys that had been happening already over the last 10 years or so. There's a very good report on the Sea Search website that's all about the fireworks anemones around these lochs, and also some of the lochs that are further south from here as well. So it's quite, we were looking at areas that were earmarked for future investigation, and when we looked at the report, there was a particular part of Loch Alsh that looked promising because we could get in the water. So, and this is where it is. So if you look at that little map there, the bottom right-hand side is where the castle is, to give you an idea of where it all is. And it's in a village called Ardelve. and it's a basin. It's a kind of it's a very sheltered basin within a sheltered sea log, which gives you an idea about the kind of habitats that these anemones like to live in. And you can see that it's about 30 meters deep in the deepest part of it, according to the charts. But we've never actually been to the. We think we've probably been to the depths, but we need to do a bit more investigation to find out a little bit more about what the seabed is like. You can see there's lots of little red lines and circles and things on the map there. So the lines are sea search surveys that we've actually recorded, where we're trying to get an idea a little bit about the extent of the anemone bed, how far it goes out to. So the very far right and the very far left transects that you can see out there, we only found a few anemones. And the bit in the middle, the circle in the middle, is the densest patch. And as far as we could tell from looking and counting, there's a good few hundred anemones that are in that part of the basin. You can also see there's a little red square there, and that was the area that we decided that we would set up our site. Now, the reason for this is the first time that we ever did a dive from the shore here. We went out and we found the first thing we noticed is the visibility was terrible. Sadly, when we went in, some of the sea lochs, when you go into them, you go under the peaty water and then it's gin clear. But this particular basin is not gin clear. It's about 4 meters visibility. It's not brilliant. But we did find a 9 meter long wreck on our inaugural dive, which was very handy because it meant that we had a feature that we could then work from when we were doing our surveying. And so we've used that quite a bit as a kind of base for all of our surveys we've been doing. So I could talk a little bit. Oops, excuse me. There we go. Go back. So that's a nice nifty little drawing that we did of the actual site. So in that little red square. So it's about 25 meters from the wreck to the far end of what's a post. So we put in plastic piping into the seabed and put some lines in. And this worked out really well. This was after a lot of discussions with our friends at Sea Search to try and work out what would be a good way of being able to locate the site fairly consistently. So the shore is north. So as you're swimming in from the north, if you take a bearing, it means that the guideline will probably catch you. And we can pretty consistently actually find the anemones now. You can see that the wreck on the right-hand side. We've actually got a Secchi disc at the end of the wreck, which is a disc that you can use for measuring the visibility in the water. So if we're diving and we're measuring that, then we'll take a line out and measure to get an idea of the viz. And it is very consistently about 4 meters. It doesn't really change very much at all. You can see that there's a couple of lines. So there's a few posts there, and then the lines, and then there's another line, a branch line that we put out. So the little red stars that you see there are the anemones that we have now adopted, and they're range in size. So there's one that's about 17 centimeters to one that's about 44 centimeters across in the tentacles. There's a pair there as well with their tentacles touch. So we were trying to get a range. We were quite lucky. And as I say, it's usually about 16 to 20 meters depth, depending on the tide. So it works out very well for a recreational dive. You can go down there and you can do quite a bit of work at that depth and have the time to do it. So this is what it actually looks like on the site, with a kind of ghostly green glow. So you can see on the left there is one of the plastic posts that we put in, and there's a green line. That's our guideline that we've been using. And you can see on the right is the anemone with a very clean post. The reason being that that's quite newly put in post. As you can see on the left, over time, they start to become a habitat in themselves, the plastic posts. And the other thing that you'll see on the left-hand side is the little stick things that are in the seabed there are slender sea pens. So they're the other kind of sea pen. When I showed you earlier, there was one that was a phosphorescent sea pen. There's a bed of these that are just north of the fireworks anemone bed. So they overlap a little bit, and they come and go as well. Sometimes you'll dive and there'll be quite a lot of them out and probably feeding, and other times they have disappeared into the mud as well. And here's a picture to give you an idea about what the working environment's like. So that's me. I have to at this point thank Halcyon Dive Systems for their fantastic fluorescent wet notes, because it means in that kind of environment they stick out a mile. You can see them. You can see the post and part of the line there as well. Could tell you a little bit about the environment as well in terms of the temperature, because it doesn't change massively. So it starts off in the winter time, it can be about 7 degrees, and it goes up to maybe about 13. I don't know if we've ever had 14 degrees. So it doesn't change radically in terms of temperature. But it does generally, it's pretty dark. Very occasionally you get a very bright day and it might be just a teeny bit lighter down there, but most of the time it's pretty dark and it's pretty murky. So I'm maybe not selling this at the moment, but I'll carry on. So this is what happens to the lines. Now this is just over a year, and just over a year, as I say, the lines have become somewhat a habitat in themselves. What you're seeing on our green line, you can't really see the line anymore. What you can see are lots of peacock worms that are on it, and also sea squirts that have attached themselves, and also tend to get quite a lot of hermit crabs that go tightrope up and down the line and on the post. So this eventually, I suspect, was going to become a bit of an issue for us in terms, because we want to try and keep the line there to help us to find the site. So if anybody fancies getting involved in the project, maybe a bit of line cleaning would be really brilliant. But it's something we're either going to have to replace them or we'll have to clean them, and how we go about it, I don't know. You'll also notice on this picture that there's some weed on the left-hand side. It's some kelp. There's not much weed on the muddy bottom, but there are bits that are just kind of floating around with the tide. There's not current really as such there, not much current at all. That's why the anemones like being there. But the weed will sometimes catch on the line. Fortunately, the line that we put in that runs along the slope doesn't seem to catch much weed. We had another line that we put in, and when we put it in, the first thing we noticed when we went back is it kept on catching weed. So we've had to do a few adjustments as to the lines, as to making sure that they stay, that they're not catching too much weed, and obviously we don't want them kind of engulfing the anemones all the time. So I go on to the next slide. So one of the other kind of challenging things that we have, of course, is taking photographs of our anemones. So neither Martin and I, we're not professional scientists, nor are we professional photographers. So we have some kit, and we do our best in the silt. You get a lot of backscatter from the silt sometimes when you try to take pictures. So we're trying to work out ways now of being able to take better pictures of them under the water. And I think consistency, of course, is really important for this, because the idea is that you take the same picture in the same place. So we're thinking of putting more posts in that we can use as guideposts as to where we put the camera when we take our pictures. Because as you can see in this picture, what's happened is that one of the slender sea pens has photobombed our picture, and there can be quite a lot of them. Sometimes they're up and they get in the way a bit. The thing that you see in the bottom left there that looks a bit like a pile of noodles is one of the anemones when it's kind of semi-retracted. So sometimes we find them like this, and sometimes they go like this when they're disturbed. And what seems to disturb them the most is a very bright torch. Torches they do not like at all. So we have to be a bit careful when we're taking pictures and things about how we're shining lights on them. But if you touch them, quite often they don't necessarily retract. So we've been able to measure, be able to get quite close to them. If you hover, you can sneak up on them and you hover really, really gently. You can literally take a tape measure and go across the tentacle head, and some of the tentacles might even touch, but it won't necessarily retract, but you have to do it very, very gently when you do that. So what exactly are we doing then? So we're recording, as I say, temperature and visibility when we go there and looking at the anemones. We're also looking at what they might be doing, because they don't necessarily stay the same. So the anemone you see on the right has retracted quite well into its tube, and there's just a little of the top of it that you can see there just poking out. And as I say, sometimes they disappear completely, you can't see them. But it's the associated species actually that are of some note, and quite a few of the sea search guys have been quite interested in. There's a particular kind of worm called Myxicola. So the blobs that you see at the front are a couple of sea squirts, but there are other little bubbly, blobby things that you see around. And they're this particular kind of worm that seems to live in association with the anemones. And so that would be an interesting area for the study. The anemone in the middle you can see is feeding, so you can see how it brings its tentacles into the middle, which is where its mouth is, and they're really amazing to watch when they're doing this. They're really fascinating if you kind of hover over the top of them. And the one on the left is quite interesting. There's a few times that we've seen anemones do this, and they go into a kind of flaccid wig-like state, and you can see one here. And I'm not sure what the deal is with that, because they're not retracted, they just go floppy. And I think that there's one of our anemones that we've got that we're recording. I think it has done that once, and it's bounced back to life again, so it's not dying or anything as far as we know, but we don't know what they're doing. Whether it's hydrostatic or whether it's muscular, I don't know, but that's another area that would be really interesting to find out. So the data itself, what happens to all of this recording and all of this data? So we've got spreadsheets at home that we fill out. So we've had about over 30 visits to the site, but only 10 of them have we actually done the project baseline recording. So you can see here the columns show the different anemones, and we've got also a column for the rec as well, which is where we take the visibility reading to. And all of this data gets put together, and we usually go about once a year to actually do the measuring, because as you can imagine, they're not growing massively quickly. It'd be interesting to see how much, if we can notice any change in the size of them over the time we're doing this, because I mean, we're planning to do it for quite a few years if we can, but and hopefully other people might as well. But nobody knows how old the anemones get to be, so it's quite an important point. It's like, how quickly do they grow, and you know, how old do they get to be? So you can see all of this data gets then sent through to the project baseline admin, who do a fantastic job then in putting it all into this database. And the great thing about the database is that anybody can access it. It's there on the project baseline website, and you can click into projects that are all over the world and see what they've been up to. So it's really, really excellent. You'll notice the map that we have of our sea lochs have got lots of clouds over them. When you click onto the site, you won't see the map. You'll just see a very typical picture of the west of Scotland with lots of clouds. But underneath it are all the anemone pictures that we have. So you can actually select different survey stations, which are the little posts with the anemones, and make comparative. You can have a look and see how they all are at different times of the year and that kind of thing. So it's really fantastic. It's all getting collated, and then you'll also be able to see in all of the sites what the temperature and visibility is at different times as well. So it's really brilliant. So what for the future for the project? This is the thing is that at the moment we're working the sea search surveys and project baseline in tandem, and I have to say they work very well together. So they work very well together. You've got the individual surveys that you do for sea search, and then there's this kind of long-term monitoring thing that's then going on with Project Baseline. And I would say that they have very different kind of aims and things, but they do work really well. So the other things that we're thinking that would be really good, obviously at the moment it's very, very difficult to have project weekends. We'd love to be able to get a boat and be able to get people together to maybe survey some other parts of the lochs as well, to see how if they're, have a look at some of the ones that were earmarked as other possible sites and that kind of thing as well. So that would be really great. Ongoing site management, of course, cleaning of the lines and things like that, setting up new lines, that would be really handy as well. And so, I mean, the main thing is it's a simple question: why are we doing this? So, and ideally, we'd like maybe other folk to be able to get involved as well, and maybe that would be really good. From our point of view, it's very simple. It's because we can get to the site really easily. The anemones are nice and big, so they're easy to find. They usually live in groups, and of course, because they don't move around as well, at least we don't think they move around, it makes it easy for us to be able to go down and see them. And the other thing as well is important is that in marine projects, there aren't that many marine projects that are kind of looking at something so specific for a long time. So just looking at actually a specific organism and going back to it again and again and looking at it and seeing what it's doing. And there aren't many fireworks anemones as well. So it's a project that hopefully it's going to carry along. And for it to be successful, I think it has to carry on for a long time. So it only goes for me to say, thank you to all the people that have helped us with the project. So there's Owen Paisley of Sea Search Scotland, who's been absolutely brilliant in giving us lots of advice about setting up the site and about the anemones. Christy Connolly from Project Baseline, who was doing the admin, she's put in all our data into the database and is very encouraging, as is Marcus Rose for Project Baseline UK. So, and we'd also like to thank Halcyon Dive Systems as well for their fantastic fluorescent west notes as well. So thank you very much.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Right, hopefully Marcus is going to work now. Let's see if we can hear Marcus now.
Hi guys, hi John, can you hear me this time?
Yes.
Yeah.
About the 10th time lucky, that's good. Great.
No, I've pushed the wrong button and merged myself back in. Hang on, I'll leave Marcus to talk to you whilst I reset this in the background.
Great. Thanks John for sorting out the technical side of things. It's good to finally be on and be able to join you. And thanks very much to Martin and Vanessa for the presentation on the ongoing efforts with the project. As you guys know, I absolutely love the work that you're doing up in Skye. It's a fantastic part of the world, absolutely stunning, and great to come and visit. And we need to set that up more often. But you're in a great place to run a Project Baseline site as well, being in and around an MPA with lots of marine priority features around. And the collaboration effort that you've got going with Sea Search is absolutely fantastic as well, and I think really shows the beauty of Project Baseline when working with somebody else to have a kind of question to answer and somewhere to send that data for it to be better utilised. So no, thanks both of you for the presentation and for the ongoing efforts up in Scotland. So John, have we got any questions coming on any of the channels yet?
We don't have any questions come through yet. We've had several people saying thank you for a great talk. Lots of people, Todd and Christy saying they're looking forward to coming and visiting, which would be pretty cold as well. But yeah.
If there aren't any, I missed a bit of the presentation because of John's technical inability. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions which you may have covered. And,
go on.
if you had, go over them. So you're obviously quite remote up there in Scotland. What are some of the logistical challenges that you have in furthering the project?
In terms of for us to expand the project, we've thought about looking at anemones in the lochs, larger area of the lochs, and that might involve getting boats. But even here, there is a lot of boat operators, but most of them are providing for tourists in the summertime, and they're not really looking to take divers. They're happy with tourists. They make good money out of tourists, and by this time, especially the winter season, they're not really interested. There's a couple of boats that have tail lifts and maybe would be ideal, but they just sit there in the mooring in the winter or are out because they don't really need. They're not looking for the business at all. So logistically, that is a problem, and just for us, we're so far from diving infrastructure. There's not really, we can't, we have to have our own compressor for gas, and there's not much, you have to be very self-sufficient. So that's a problem that we have to try and get other people involved. If we want to have a long continuous project, then we need to have some outreach. But there's quite a few people that dive in the island, but they'll almost all be commercial. They'll be going for scallops. So whether or not we can persuade a couple of the scallop divers to get interested and give us some nitrox now and then, that would be fine. But that's what's like.
So does Sea Search have questions they want answered for other sites around the area then that would warrant getting boat access and trying to find other marine features? Or?
I think the thing is that 95% of all fireworks anemones are in Scotland, globally, and this is a species that is important, because this is the global concentration, and so it's just to get a general idea of how common they are within the sea lochs, and where, I think they are very keen to do that.
Yeah, they identified in the reports, as I say, from the Sea Search reports, there are a few. That's how we found the site, the Project Baseline site, and started working with it. It's because they'd earmarked a few different possibilities, places, and that was the one where we could get in. But there's other ones that you would need a boat to get to.
And what are the key things that Sea Search want to know about the anemones? Is there any sort of one particular question that they're trying to answer?
I think there's a lot. I think because there's so little known, it's population densities. What environment, we know what their ideal environment is, but how far they can spread, maybe impact of man, how fish farms will be affecting, and the biggest question is there's no records in the wild of very small juvenile fireworks anemones.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing when we're diving, because you see, and the previous surveys that Sea Search have done, they were recording as well as abundances, but also looking at sizes as well. And there's just not that many really little ones. And we've looked out, and sometimes you see something and you think, oh, maybe that's like a juvenile or something that's really small, maybe small, 10 centimeters or smaller. And then you look closely and you think it's a different kind. It's a burrowing anemone, but it's a different species, different kind. So it's that would be it makes you wonder about larvae dispersal and reproduction and that kind of thing, because so far, we put a few feelers out to try and find out, and obviously, had a look at the reports and things. But as far as we know, there are some fireworks anemones that are in aquaria, that they keep them, but I don't know how long they live for in the aquarium. And so there's, as far as when you look it up online, it just says that they don't know how old they get to be, and you do wonder, and you think, oh, we could be measuring them for quite a few years, and we might only see, like, a few millimeters every year. You don't know how much. I mean, it's quite interesting to see that they do. I mean, they do go right down into the mud. I mean, when you read up about them, it says, oh, they can't retract their tentacles, but they can sure get down into the mud, so they disappear completely. There's been a few times when we've seen that. So I think the mud just covers over the tube, and they disappear. So yeah, there's a few things like that, but it was, I think things to do with reproduction, because obviously it's really important for their conservation to know, how. I mean, they are identified as vulnerable just because there are so few beds of them, and they don't seem to spread about very much as well. The larvae don't seem to go very far, as far as we know.
No, that's really interesting. The other thing I love about your project is it really draws out the two strengths of Project Baseline. The collaboration part, where you're working with somebody else to kind of feed data into them that they might not be able to get through commercial divers, and having to fund divers to go and do that. And also the long-term benefits, exactly as you've mentioned there. Some of those data sets, such as the growth and the intensity of them in the area, you just wouldn't know if you went and did that single dive or just did a project for a week or a weekend. So no, it's a really great job you're doing up there. Really good. Should we pause there, John? Is there anything else?
No, we've now got a load of questions. Let me. I'm going to pull up a few. There's quite a lot, and we'll get you guys to come onto the chat later, and you can go through them on the text. But I'll start with this one. Here we go. So Christine Davis has asked, really interesting, thank you. Is there anything that you can do with just a snorkel? I'm up for it, not a diver.
Not, unfortunately, I don't think for the fireworks and anemones, but for other things. We started out when we first came to Skye, we didn't have a dry suit ticket or anything. We knew how to dive, but when we came up here, and so we started out as snorkelers. We spent quite a bit of time just snorkeling around and looking. There are some really fantastic places around Skye and Lochoush where you can snorkel. But of the muddy habitats, the species, I mean, they tend to be 10 meters or deep. It's not so easy to see those with a snorkel, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Cool. Kind of conservation data perspective can be done, isn't there? So a lot of sort of sea search stuff can be done in the shallows for sure.
Yes.
With
absolutely.
Things like going and identifying and picking up marine litter, if perhaps not quite as glamorous as doing the sort of species type stuff, but is another kind of marine conservation effort that can easily be done by snorkelers. So there's a lot out there that can be done for sure.
Yeah. Okay, a bit more of a diving related question, this one from Christine, basically asking how close can you get to the fireworks and enemies with a camera before they disappear themselves?
You can get. The problem is they don't mind being touched, but bright light is an issue. So if you have a focus light, normally when we are doing photography, I'll have a kind of focus light and I'll be well out to the side. So there'll be a kind of soft light over them from maybe a couple of meters away. And if you come in with a strobe you can get quite close. You can't, as long as you don't have too bright a light to start with, you can just, if you've got a bit of background light from out the side, you can get quite close in. But we normally do photos from a distance so we can get the posts in as well. We're not getting too close up. We want to be able to actually identify an enemy and have the post in the shot as well.
Cool. All right, this one from Christy, basically asking about kind of outreach. Have you guys done anything with the local communities to talk about your project or kind of advertise it, I guess?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the local, not so much the project, but just generally diving and marine conservation here as a whole. When our sons were at the primary school, the school here, we did a talk with, showed all the kids our gear. And there's a local climate action group that was quite interested in what we were doing. So we've recently kind of made contact with them and written up a bit for them. So there's a little bit of that going on at the moment, but we're not famous.
Did you do a Quest article as well, Vanessa?
Yeah, there's been talk of that. That hasn't actually happened yet, but there's somebody that we know through the climate action group, and I think she's quite keen to get something in the local press a little bit about it. I've also investigated as well. There have been occasionally marine consciousness kind of days where they've had locally, where they've had all kinds of different organizations that have got together and have talked about stuff, and they've had events and things on, which is a shame at the moment. Obviously that's not on the cards, but those kinds of things, if they happen in the future, would certainly be interested in getting it. But I have to say, most of the time we're just quietly getting on looking at our enemies.
Yeah, cool. I think probably one more question. As I said, there's several, but I think you kind of answered several of them in the talk with Marcus anyway at the end there. But here's a good one from Ian. How do other divers get involved?
Aha! By getting in touch. I think that probably the best way initially is through the project base. It's called Project Baseline Loch Alsh Facebook page, and then we've already had a few folk that have been interested that have got in touch just about the site and things. Because it is accessible from the shore for anybody. So technically, if you're a diver and you do shore diving, and you can go and you can contribute data then as well. So at the moment, there's nothing. We don't have anything online that you can click. But if you send it to us, then we can send it on to Christy Connolly over in the States. So that's one way. The other way, of course, is if we can get people together, as Martin was saying about boats. We're still looking at ways of maybe doing some boat dives in the loch, and maybe talking to Sea Search as well about that a bit more. And so it's things like that. I think as well, I mean, just generally with the Fireworks Anemone project, if there are other sites, not just in the Loch Alsh MPA, but other places as well, if there are sites that are located, perhaps more of this kind of thing could go on in other places as well. I know there's one place where there's also some monitoring that's going on further south in Scotland as well. And that could go on in other places too. So, but yeah, just getting in touch through Facebook initially would be great. And also getting in touch about Project Baseline, getting in touch with Marcus Rose, and just generally about the scheme as well.
Yeah, I guess just to follow up on that question, the beauty of Project Baseline is that you can run a small project of your own in your local area really, really easily. So if you are interested in doing something, but there's nothing on your doorstep, then please get in touch either through the Project Baseline UK Facebook page, or we have a website as well, projectbaselineuk.org as well, and you can go on there and contact us through that channel. Cool. So is that kind of wrapping up the questions, John?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple of others in there, but as I said, I think you covered a lot of the bits, and we can go through the chat later and do some answers if we need to.
Cool. Brilliant. Good. Well, I guess that just leaves me then to say some final thanks. So really, really great to hear your talk, both Vanessa and Martin, and thanks for the interactive questions at the end there. Like I said a couple of times, absolutely love the work you're doing up there. It's obvious that you're really passionate about it, and you're applying some really good citizen science techniques to that very sort of bespoke question set that you're trying to answer. But shows the beauty of Project Baseline and what can be done with passionate citizen scientists. So that's fantastic. And thanks for your time this evening as well. Thanks to John for third week in a row for making it a success. Just about this time.
Just about. We got it working in the end.
with some technical issues, but now we got through it, and yeah, a really great evening again. So that's the third of our sort of 4-part series. The next one is not a week today, it's a week on Monday. We'll put some more details up in the Facebook group, but excitingly we have Dr. Todd Kincaid joining us for the final session, and he's going to talk about a slightly more glamorous project in some maybe clearer, but should be very interesting. He'll be talking about, I'm sure he'll mention submarines and research ships and scientists. So definitely the other end of the scale from what you've heard in the last 2 or 3 talks. But it should be a great way to finish. So we'll look forward to that in just over a week's time. So great, thanks very much for tuning in. I hope the rest of lockdown or whatever you're in isn't too painful, and we'll see you hopefully in just over a week's time. Thanks very much.
Great. Thank you.